This is a Sales Geek academia to business translation production. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are putting a mirror up to the luxury industry. It's this huge, high-stakes market, over €1 trillion worldwide. And we're really questioning the basic way people are trained to sell within it.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
Because the usual advice, the books, the seminars for luxury sales, they almost always push emotional connection. You hear words like magic, passion, aspiration all the time.
Right.
But the academic work we're looking at, research focusing specifically on high-end retail, it kind of suggests this whole approach might be, flawed. Because it seems to ignore a really fundamental psychological point.
And that point is exactly what this deep dive is about, especially for you, the sales leader, looking for quick, usable insights. We want to cut through the noise and get to the core mechanism the research found, which is when a customer considers buying something expensive, something discretionary, they often feel pretty strong guilt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about being happy with the purchase. It's this internal conflict. Guilt pops up because, spending a lot on luxury can clash with our ideas about being sensible or rational or, practical.
And that feeling hurts the intention to actually buy, right?
Definitely. So our whole discussion today is really about one main question. How does sales communication need to change to get past that guilt? How do you give the buyer the justification they need? The rational reason.
Okay, before we jump into how to justify it, let's quickly define what we mean by luxury here. Is it just about being expensive?
Well, what's really interesting is how subjective it is in the research.
Yeah.
Luxury is defined by the customer's perception, their perceived degree of luxury.
Okay.
And that seems to hang on about three things: how exclusive they think it is, how prestigious, and of course the quality. It's kind of a status thing in their own mind.
Yeah.
Regardless of, the sticker price necessarily.
Got it. So it's relative. If they feel it's a big splurge, that's when the guilt mechanism starts firing. And they need an excuse for their wallet.
Precisely. They're basically looking for solid, defendable reasons to back up a decision that maybe from a purely practical angle doesn't make total sense. That's the gap sales needs to bridge.
Okay, right. So let's look at the two different communication styles the researchers tested against each other to see which one actually works better when that guilt factor is high.
So first up, you've got informative salesperson communication. This is all about the facts. Hard data, concrete details, things you can quantify about the product. The arguments are meant to be objective, easy to check. Think like engineering specs, where the materials came from, the exact history.
Yeah, the example they gave was pretty clear. This chair was designed by the famous designer Charles Eames. Or, explaining the engine's torque figures, very factual.
Right. And then the alternative, which is often what you see recommended in the industry press, is emotional salesperson communication. This style tries to stir up positive feelings. It appeals to emotions, identity, maybe aspirations, inspirational stuff, trying to tap into desire.
Okay, but hang on a second. Isn't luxury supposed to be emotional? I mean, if I'm shelling out 10 times the price for, say, a watch or a bespoke suit, surely I'm buying into a story, an aspiration, a feeling. Are these researchers saying we should just ditch all the magic and passion? Where's the balance?
And that's the absolute key question, isn't it? The research argues that the emotional approach, even though it feels intuitive, it actually kind of backfires when there's significant guilt involved.
Backfires? Why?
Because the emotional arguments can seem a bit superficial, subjective maybe, and crucially, they tend to appeal directly to indulgence. So if the salesperson only talks about how amazing and indulgent the purchase will make you feel, they might actually be reinforcing the very feeling, the guilt, that the customer is already struggling with.
So pushing the magic and the feeling too hard could actually make the customer feel worse about spending the money, like a psychological own goal.
Exactly. It increases that cognitive dissonance. Whereas the factual, informative approach, that gives the customer concrete, rational, sort of socially acceptable arguments. It provides the facts they need to rationalize the splurge. It reduces the guilt, gives them that justification, like a functional alibi or a historical defense.
Wow. Okay. That really flips the script on typical sales training for luxury. So how did they actually prove this? Was it just theoretical?
No, they tested it quite rigorously. They used two main studies. Study one was out in the field. They looked at 145 actual retail customers right after they'd spoken to a salesperson. And this was across different luxury areas: furniture, cars, fashion. So pretty diverse.
Okay, real world data. And then study two, you said they scaled it up.
Yeah, study two was a bigger controlled experiment, like a simulation. They had 832 participants. Imagine they were buying a high-end car. And this setup let them really carefully control things, exposing people to either a purely informative pitch or a purely emotional one.
Right, isolating the variable. And the core result, combining both studies, what did it clearly show?
Hypothesis 1, right?
Yeah.
The finding was pretty clear-cut, yeah. When the customer perceives the item as highly luxurious, informative salesperson communication has a significant positive effect. It boosts the perceived value of the product. And following that, the customer's intention to actually buy it.
So facts literally make the expensive thing feel more valuable and worth the cost. It's not just a slight preference.
Exactly. Facts demonstrably increased perceived value. Meanwhile, the emotional approach, in that high guilt situation, it turned out to be, well, pretty ineffective, actually. The facts help resolve that internal conflict, that cognitive dissonance. They let customers get past the ouch of the price and see the item as, a smart buy or high value or somehow necessary.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Before we dig into the specifics of when facts are most critical, just a quick reminder. Remember to like, share, and register so you don't miss our next deep dive into the research shaping how business really works. All right, let's get into the nuance then, because this is where the advice gets really practical for coaching sales teams, right? The researchers found 2 specific situations, boundary conditions, they called them, where the need for facts and the power of that informative style gets massively boosted. So where is it most powerful?
Okay, the first condition is about the type of product itself. Hedonic product focus. Hedonic products are basically things bought mainly for pleasure, fun, excitement. Think fancy jewelry, high-end home decor, or maybe the sporty design elements of a car rather than its fuel economy.
Right, things that aren't strictly necessary, more like treats.
Exactly. And they're seen as much more discretionary compared to, say, utilitarian products like a super efficient appliance or basic office gear.
So because a hedonic item feels more like a pure splurge, it naturally triggers more guilt. It feels harder to justify.
That's precisely the idea. The customer sees it as more discretionary, maybe even a bit frivolous, so they feel a stronger need for what the researchers termed a functional alibi, a really solid, rational reason to explain the purchase, maybe to themselves, maybe to others.
Ah, okay.
And because of that stronger need, the positive impact of informative communication gets significantly amplified for those pleasure-focused items.
Right. So if you're selling, say, a really beautiful, expensive, but maybe not super practical piece of art glass,
Yeah.
you should lean even harder on the artist's history, the technique, the rarity, the facts, than you might for a luxury item that also has a clear practical use, like a top-of-the-line espresso machine.
That's exactly it. Perfect example. Now, the second boundary condition is about the money, relative price level. The research confirmed, perhaps unsurprisingly, that as you go higher up the price scale within any product category, well, the customer's pain of payment increases.
Makes sense. The bigger the number, the more it stings. And that increased pain, that just ramps up the feelings of being wasteful, right? Which is basically guilt again.
Yeah, exactly. When the guilt gets amplified by a higher price tag, the need for a strong justification gets amplified too. That high price makes informative communication even more essential to counter the heightened guilt and make the value proposition clear. Study 2 actually confirmed this directly. The highest price scenario showed the factual pitch having a significantly stronger effect on purchase intent.
Okay, the message for sales leaders seems crystal clear here. The more it costs and the more it's just for pleasure, the harder you need to hit them with the objective value proposition. The facts. Let's boil this down. What are 3 immediate, actionable changes a sales leader listening right now should think about making, based purely on this research?
Okay, actionable takeaway 1. Audit your communication scripts for justification points. Seriously, look at how your team is trained. Shift the focus. Move away from just pushing generic emotional stuff. Instead, double down on building and teaching concrete, factual product knowledge. Can your salespeople clearly explain the specific engineering, the source of the materials, the complex way it's made, the design lineage? These facts are the tools customers actually use to justify the price to themselves.
Yeah, so swap out vague promises of happiness for hard facts. Instead of saying, this watch will make you feel powerful, maybe try. This watch movement has 300 individual components, hand-finished over 50 hours, ensuring accuracy within 2 seconds a day. Give them objective quality, not just a subjective feeling.
Precisely. Okay, actionable takeaway 2. Prioritize facts for frivolous purchases. Make it a specific strategy. Really maximize the informative arguments for items that lean heavily towards the hedonic side. We're talking jewelry, high fashion items, decorative pieces, top-tier car trims, that kind of thing. The more it feels like a discretionary treat, the higher the likely guilt and the stronger the fact-based alibi needs to be. They need that justification.
Got it. Facts first for fun stuff.
Yeah.
And the final takeaway, this one feels crucial for coaching.
Yeah. Actionable takeaway 3. Coach against emotional pressure. Sales coaching really needs to push back against the instincts some salespeople have to create this kind of high-pressure artificial enthusiasm.
Right.
You need to recognize that going too heavy on the emotion, especially with pricey items, genuinely risks triggering that sale-killing guilt and actually lowering the perceived value. The aim should be providing objective, defendable value points that allow for rational justification, not trying to whip up some subjective excitement that just feels like pressure.
Wow. That really is a fundamental shift from a lot of the received wisdom in luxury sales, isn't it? It's all about grounding that inherent desire in objective reality to close the deal.
That's exactly what the science seems to be telling us, yes.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. This research really focused on the classic, person-to-person salesperson interaction. But luxury is often described as being inherently social, right? There's an element of showing off, maybe, or fitting in. So how might the effectiveness of this informative, fact-based approach change when customers are interacting with, say, newer technologies, like an AI sales assistant or maybe an anonymous online concierge? In those situations, maybe those face-saving concerns, the need to justify the purchase to another person, might be less intense. Does the need for justification change when the main person you have to convince is just yourself? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into why facts might just trump feelings when selling luxury. This has been another Sales Geek Academia to Business Translation production.